Tonight on Primetime, a fragile ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon has been extended after fresh talks in Washington. Violence has eased for now, but strikes have not fully stopped, and Hezbollah remains a key factor on the ground. With diplomacy buying time but not resolving the core tensions, uncertainty still hangs over the region. So, is this a step toward lasting stability or just a pause before the next flare-up? Welcome to the program. I'm Melih Demirtaş. A fragile ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon appears set to hold for now, following fresh talks in Washington aimed at preventing further escalation. But even as the pause is extended, questions remain over how long it can last, with Hezbollah still a key factor on the ground.
US President Donald Trump said Israel and Lebanon have agreed to extend a ceasefire between Israel and the Hezbollah militant group by 3 weeks after talks at the White House on Thursday.
We had a great meeting with the very high officials of Lebanon and very high officials of Israel, and we think that the President of Lebanon and the Prime Minister of Israel over the next couple of weeks will be coming here. They've agreed to an additional 3 weeks of, no firing, ceasefire, no more firing. Let's see. We hope that happens. It's not going to happen between them, but they do have Hezbollah to think about.
His announcement came during a second round of US-facilitated talks in the Oval Office, with Israel's ambassador to Washington, Yehiel Leiter, and Lebanon's ambassador to the US, Nada Hamader Moawad. The ceasefire has led to a significant drop in violence. The announcement came a day after Israeli strikes killed at least 5 people, including a journalist. Hezbollah, which is not controlled by the Lebanese armed forces, has not immediately commented on the ceasefire. Meanwhile, moments after the ceasefire was announced, Israel struck a Hezbollah missile launcher. The Israeli army released footage showing what it said was strikes on rocket launchers at a Hezbollah military site in southern Lebanon.
And on the streets of Beirut, a pause in fighting is not being met by some with relief, but with questions over what comes next. Here's more.
Residents in Beirut are voicing deep skepticism about the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon after US President Donald Trump announced a 3-week extension to the agreement. While Washington presents the move as part of wider stabilization efforts, many on the ground question whether a short-term truce can bring real change.
Trump in the United States is saying, "We have given you 3 weeks." What's this? This is not a ceasefire. This is blackmail. More than blackmail, it is a political blackmail to our presidency and the Prime Minister's office.
He also pointed to recent violence, including reported killings in southern Lebanon and the death of a journalist, questioning whether such incidents are consistent with a ceasefire. Others describe a deeper sense of fatigue, pointing to decades of recurring conflict that continue to shape daily life.
We want this ceasefire to be permanent, not just a week or 3 weeks. We wish that we could have a ceasefire all the time and that we could end this story. We are people who are tired. More than 50 years we keep on repeating the same cycle.
The extension, brokered in Washington, is part of broader efforts to ease regional tensions, including issues linked to Iran and security in the Strait of Hormuz.
All right, now to help us unpack this, we're joined by political analyst Lamis Jdid, coming to us from Lisbon. Lamis, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on Primetime. Let's start with this announcement from Washington. What are your thoughts on this extension to the ceasefire and how it came to be?
I think it's a genuine wish from the United States to go for some victory regarding what's happening in the Middle East. Meanwhile, things between America and Iran does not really make any clear advancement, and this is why Mr. Trump really he insisted that these meetings between the two delegations will take place in the White House, and he wanted himself to be shown in the picture. I think this is an attempt that everybody needs for the time being, especially people in Lebanon that showed a lot of interest in stopping this war. The people are tired and people want some kind of final agreements that seems not to show up except with a bigger deal with Iran mainly. And secondly, also markets does not like all this instability, and it suffered a lot. And we saw the important word here is not only peace, but it's stability and it's some kind of market managing markets and reassuring the economy. So I think all of us, we are waiting for some kind of advancement in one of these fronts, either with Iran or in Lebanon.
When it comes to the situation on the ground, there are fresh evacuation orders for the South Lebanon. There are fire exchanges happening. In those terms, in those practical living conditions, how significant is this extension of a truce?
Yeah, the situation in Lebanon is really now really not comfortable for everybody. It's the minimum to say here. Some families, 4 families, they sleep in one class in a school, some in the stadium, and of course with an economic crisis also all over the Middle East. It's not a difficult situation, and people are looking for some kind of agreement. But also people are looking for fair agreements, and this was not the case whenever Israel tried to do any agreement in the last years. And I think Israel, we know how they make war now, and the Lebanese, they understand it so well. It's mainly assassination and destruction. But still, we are having hope that this might lead really for some significant advancement if the American will truly try to get engaged and get more serious in solving this problem now and maybe for the long term that we could see.
Well, when it comes to the Americans, how do you see their role here in bringing both sides to the table? How do you evaluate the U.S. involvement here?
Listen, I think unfortunately, and I'm sad to say this, but the United States did not prove recently that they are a decent broker when it comes to any negotiation when Israel is involved. And any other side will understand this so well. And so it's good. It's some kind now of a bigger context, this initiative. And this bigger context is Iran, of course, and the war with Iran. And this is the main concern for America. I think anything to be solved in Lebanon might be dealt with through the Iranian mainly, though some kind of negotiation might take place now. And this is what America is trying to do between the Lebanese government and the Israeli. And I think this is some kind of attempt in a way to move this conflict from between two countries like Lebanon or Hezbollah, if we could say, and Israel to some kind of interior conflict between Hezbollah himself and the Lebanese army. And I think this is another tunnel that we hope we don't enter to very soon as well.
Now, when you've touched upon Hezbollah, obviously it is a warring party here, but the negotiations involve Israel and the Lebanese government. We've just heard in the past few hours from Hezbollah saying that this ceasefire is meaningless. with the continued Israeli strikes. Do you see Hezbollah as being a possible obstacle in the future of the peace process?
I think first you need to consider that Hezbollah is part of the Lebanese society first, and it's the majority of the Lebanese until today. We cannot just discard Hezbollah from its social fabrics also. It's a whole component in the Lebanese society. It's not only a military organization. Those people, they defended the Lebanese borders, and they pushed the Israeli many times out of Lebanon. So we cannot just look at them as some kind of just military existence. Lebanon is a very complicated case when it comes to who could rule Lebanon, who could win any war in Lebanon. And this is what America, we hope that the American now in the White House understands so well the history of the Middle East and mainly in Lebanon. And I think by the invitation that was made to the Lebanese government to go to Washington or to open a direct or indirect negotiation with the Israeli right now, I think it's to turn around Hezbollah and to push them to either surrender their arm to the Lebanese government, and then the Lebanese government could deal with Israel, though we don't know the capacity of Lebanon as it is now, a state and an army, to do any kind of protecting the borders if they could not protect even a journalist from being sniped or killed by the Israeli, and then even they could not even secure the Red Cross from coming and securing her in Lebanon on a Lebanese borders. And we have also the example of Syria. Also, even if Syria, after the fall of Assad, mainly there is no Israel is not an enemy anymore, but still Israel can go and do whatever it wants. So it's more complicated than just to cover it up in 2-3 minutes. I think the situation is going to explode, and I don't think we are really approaching any kind of agreement for the time being. I believe we are going for escalation, either between the Israeli and Hezbollah, in case there is no negotiation, or in case if there will be a negotiation, we are going some kind of confrontation within Lebanon itself, and this might take us to a civil war. And as I mentioned, it's the worst scenario for the Lebanese.
And of course, on the other side, there's Israel with its forces deployed within Lebanon in what they are calling a security parameter or something of that nature. Is any peace possible while Israeli soldiers are in Lebanon?
Listen, I think now we could be in front of many scenarios. Some people speak about Charter 7, that asking the help of the United Nations to control this area. But I think still it's an occupation. It's not their country. It's they are coming to another country. They do whatever they want. They kill. They assassinate. I think Israel needs to be in an atmosphere or with neighbors that are a little bit friendly to it, and not to have everybody as enemy around. They are there since now almost 100 years, and I think they need now to find a place where they could have friends more than enemies.
And Lamis, finally, I'd like to hear your thoughts on what needs to happen here. What are the steps that either of the sides can take to make these any possible future rounds of peace talks actually materialize, actually lead to stability?
Listen, I think who's controlling all the political scene now? It's the aggression of the Israeli. It's they want no space for peace or negotiations. They are assassinating all the moderates who are ready to talk or to go for negotiations. I think we are here not in front of two parties that are trying maybe to go into some kind of peace, or I think they are hunting the best opportunities in history to have the upper hand on the whole Middle East, I think. And I think this is where we are today. So either America could manage this this ambition, this illimit ambition of Israel and aggression of Israel, try to manage it, try to dose it and make it less, or we are really not going to see any kind of agreements that will last long. We are trying to sign for a ceasefire, and then the conflict will start again. We are speaking about nation states here and about existential threat for everybody. And I think it's a big moment, not only for Israel, but for everybody around Israel as well. And this, they should read history very well. When people have a land, they don't leave it easily.
Lamis, thank you so much for joining us on Primetime and sharing your insight and analysis.
Thank you for having me.
And we're going for a short break, but when we return, we take a look at the latest news surrounding the Iran-US war. There are reports coming in that the Iran top diplomat and US envoys are heading to Pakistan. Stay with us.
We are in Somalia, a place often used through the illusion of constant danger.
Somalia is already facing security threats from groups like Al-Shabaab.
Currently, Somalia has 3.4 million people internally displaced.
Mr. President, I want you to know that I'm signing now Israel's official recognition of Somaliland.
We are expecting all member states of the United Nations to recognize Somaliland.
We strongly rejected Prime Minister Netanyahu's illegal aggression in recognizing part of Somalia.
A conflict will last. People make so much money on it.
This country sits at the crossroads between instability and order, isolation and connection, risks and responsibility.
Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi will hold bilateral talks in Pakistan as that country remains a mediator between Tehran and Washington. Separately, U.S. media outlets such as CNN have reported that the U.S. president is sending envoys Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff to Islamabad. Pakistani government sources say Araghchi will not meet U.S. negotiators during the brief visit. Instead, officials in Islamabad are expected to receive Iran's proposals and convey them to Washington. The visit follows the collapse of earlier U.S.-Iran talks in Pakistan this week. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said Iran still has an open window to reach what he called a good deal at the negotiating table. Meanwhile, Tehran is emphasizing political cohesion as pressure builds around its foreign policy and security posture. The message from senior officials is aimed both at domestic audiences and outside powers watching the stalled diplomatic track with Washington.
Iran's leadership is presenting a united front, rejecting claims of internal divisions and stressing national unity at a time of rising tensions with the United States and Israel. The messaging comes as the talks between Tehran and Washington remain stalled. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei, in a post on X, repeated themes from his Nowruz message, warning that what he described as hostile media campaigns are trying to influence the hearts and minds of the public and weaken unity. At the same time, the heads of Iran's three branches of government, the presidency, parliament, and judiciary, issued a joint statement dismissing suggestions of political differences. According to official media, they said there are no hardliners or moderates in Iran, describing the country as unified under a single path. They also warned that any external aggression would be met with a response. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi also rejected reports of divisions, saying diplomacy and military strategy are working together and that the country remains unified. Meanwhile, Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai criticized remarks by U.S. officials accusing Washington of encouraging violence. His condemnation came after U.S. President Donald Trump retweeted and liked a post by an American commentator suggesting the assassination of Iranian officials opposed to a deal between Tehran and Washington. Turaj Shiralilu, Tehran, Foreign News.
Pope Leo XIV has condemned violence in Iran, calling for an end to the killing of civilians and renewed efforts toward dialogue and peace. Speaking aboard a flight back to Rome from his Africa tour, he warned that ongoing tensions between Iran and the United States are fueling a wider humanitarian and economic crisis. Let's have a listen.
I condemn all actions that are unjust. I condemn the taking of people's lives. I condemn capital punishment. I believe that human life is to be respected and that all people from conception to natural birth, their lives should be respected and protected. So when a regime, when a country takes decisions which takes away the lives of other people unjustly, then obviously that is something that should be condemned.
On the reports that Iranian and U.S. officials are heading to Pakistan and the latest developments surrounding the ceasefire and possible peace talks, we're talking with Tolga Bilaner, director of the Galatasaray University Center for Strategic Research. Tolga, welcome. Thank you so much for joining the program. Now, with these reports coming in that Iran's top diplomat is heading to Pakistan and the U.S. envoys, as reported by CNN, are also heading to Islamabad. Do you see any chance of a new negotiating round happening in the foreseeable future?
Hello, good evening. Both sides need a deal, but both sides keep acting as if they don't need it. It is, of course, a signal that Tehran wants to keep the diplomatic channel alive, but it doesn't mean that the talks are necessarily imminent. So, and the Araghchi has also announced that he will visit after Pakistan, Oman and Russia. It makes sense because Pakistan is the mediator country, Oman is a traditional back channel, and Russia is the strategic partner of Iran. What we should remember all the time is that the Iranians are not conventional negotiators. We saw that for the past 20-25 years during the nuclear talks. So they negotiate differently from the traditional Western diplomatic negotiation style. And for them, gaining time is already a success. Simply assuring the survival of the regime, they can present it as a success. So the Americans, especially Donald Trump, who is pressing for quick deals and immediate visuals of victory, has a different timeline, but the Iranians are working completely on a different timeline.
There are also reports that the Iranian parliament speaker has stepped down from his role of the head of the negotiating team. Iran International reported it, the Israeli Channel 12 reported it. If true, what could that tell us about the future of any possible negotiating process and the situation within Iran?
I would be cautious about these reports because the report remains largely based on Israeli sources and opposition-linked outlets. But if it's true, this would suggest internal disagreement in Tehran over who controls the negotiations. And we can expect the Revolutionary Guard to be more aggressive about this subject. So if true, and it's a big if, it means that the cohesion of the Iranian regime is also at stake, which will further complicate the negotiations.
And of course, Tehran had insisted on political cohesion in the country. Just for our viewers, we have once again heard from the American-born Pope Leo XIV, again calling for an end to violence and killing civilians in Iran. Previously, he had a very public verbal spat with the U.S. president, who attacked him and even went as far as to call him weak. How important would you say that the Pope's message is right now, not only for the world, but also at those U.S. audiences?
Especially, it's important for the U.S. audiences. You know that we have elections in the U.S. in a couple of months, and the Catholic electorate is a quite important one, especially because of Latino immigration. The Catholics are growing in number in the United States. The point is, of course, Pope Leo knows perfectly the American domestic balances and the American politics, because, as you mentioned, he's born in the United States. And in the last couple of months, he became one of the most vocal opponents of President Trump. And President Trump is supported by some segments of evangelical church, but the Catholic Church is defending another line. And they are clearly opposed to the war that's going on in the Middle East, not only against Iran, but they've been also very critical vis-a-vis the Israeli government about the operation in Lebanon. And recently, during the Easter celebrations, the Catholic leader of Jerusalem has been banned from entering a holy sepulchre church. So there is tension between the Catholic Church and the United States, but also with the Israeli government. The Pope has said it himself. The Church has a pro-life position, so they are criticizing unjust wars. They are also criticizing capital punishment, abortion, euthanasia, and so on. This is all part of a consistent ethic of life defended by the Catholic Church, and which is an important doctrine supported by several texts. The successor of the predecessor of the Pope, Pope Francis, was talking about a third world war in pieces. So he was claiming that a world war had already started, and Pope Leo, his successor, is also in this line, and he suggests in every occasion that the wars must stop. And it will have consequences in the U.S., that's for sure.
It did not take long for U.S. officials to respond to these latest remarks by Pope Leo. U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said, "Let the Pope do his thing." At that briefing today at the Pentagon, Hegseth also said that this blockade the U.S. is enacting on Iranian ports is going global. The Pentagon said that the U.S. interdicted 2 Iran-linked vessels in the Indo-Pacific region. Now, how serious is that of an escalation?
That's a major escalation in coercive diplomacy. But I will repeat what I said earlier. Americans American style of negotiation right now, especially the Trump style of deal making, is that we will make more pressure and we will expect our interlocutor to be afraid of the consequences. They will see that the cost will rise, cost of not making a deal will rise, and they will have to accept the deal. That's how Trump works in negotiations. The point is, the Iranians are not conventional negotiators and they are trying to gain time. And simply the fact of firming hold in the face of Americans, they can present it to their, in their country and also in the region as a success. So this pressure will not have immediate consequences. It will have global consequences on the economy, of course.
And Tolga, on those negotiating tactics of the U.S. president, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. We've heard from Donald Trump yesterday telling reporters that he would not use nuclear weapon in Iran following that past threat to destroy Iran's civilization. What do you make of that?
Well, of course, he wouldn't use nuclear weapons. And maybe the point is, and it may sound bizarre because we're talking about the United States president, but maybe we should stop commenting on every sentence of Donald Trump. And even we see that among the Western leaders, they are almost tired of commenting every word of the president because he says something and something else the next day. So it's now, we are used to this tactic. Of course, let's imagine for a second that the United States would use nuclear weapons against a non-nuclear country. Trump is now demolishing the international system, the very international system established by the United States after 1945, but using nuclear weapons against a non-nuclear country would mean the end of the non-proliferation regime. It will only exacerbate proliferation across the world, and it would also mean a great damage to the international law and institutions, more instability globally. So I think nobody believed in the first place that he would use nuclear weapons, and the particular thing about these weapons is that you cannot use them. It's for coercion and defense, not for attacking, especially when you talk about destroying a civilization. The next day you can't talk about liberating an oppressed population from a theocratic regime.
And Tolga, finally, obviously there's a lot of moving parts here. The situation is very fluid. We have two blockades of the Strait of Hormuz. But in your mind, what is the easiest way out of this? What's the off-ramp for both Iran and the United States?
There is no easy way out. They have created, all actors involved in this war, created a situation that is quite unsolvable in the near future. So maybe the best thing is to consolidate the situation as it is and try to get a low intensity conflict for the upcoming months.
Thank you so much for joining us and providing us with your insight and analysis.
Thank you very much.
All right, after the break, we will be taking a look at the top business stories of the day with Katie Wilson. Don't go away.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. Let's now turn to Katie Wilson, who has the top business stories of the day. Katie, what have you got for us?
Yeah, so we've got more on the economic impact of the war with Iran across several sectors, as well as China's auto show, which has just got underway. So let's get started. First this evening, with fading hopes for a quick end to the Iran conflict and rising oil prices, Wall Street closed lower yesterday. Markets were also weighed down by mixed earnings and renewed concerns over AI disruption in the software sector.
Wall Street's main indexes closed lower on Thursday, with the Dow dipping more than 0.33%, the S&P 500 shedding about 0.4%, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq dropping roughly 0.9%. Hopes dimmed for a quick end to the Middle East conflict after reports that Iran's parliament speaker had resigned from the negotiating team. Losses were extended as oil prices shot higher after reports of air attacks in Iran. Dean Smith is chief strategist and portfolio manager at Folio Beyond.
It's very difficult to judge on a day-to-day and certainly hour-to-hour and tweet-by-tweet basis how this is going to play out. And really, investors should mostly not try to do that. The situation in the energy markets and the global economy is pretty serious, and it's going to take quite a while to resolve. So people who are looking for a really quick resolution and trying to trade on these headlines are making a mistake.
Meanwhile, investors grappled with a mixed bag of earnings reports as concerns resurfaced about AI-driven disruption across the software sector. Shares of ServiceNow slumped nearly 18% after the software company said revenue growth was dented by delays in closing government deals in the Middle East. The stock's decline contributed to a more than 5% slide for the S&P 500 Software and Services Index, its biggest daily percentage drop since January 29th. Elsewhere in the market, shares of car rental company Avis Budget plummeted more than 48% days after a short squeeze sent the stock on a meteoric rally reminiscent of the meme stock craze. On the flip side, shares of Texas Instruments surged more than 19% for their biggest daily jump since October 2000, after the company forecast second quarter revenue and profit above Wall Street expectations.
Well, the impact of the war with Iran is being felt in many sectors, including energy, where soaring prices are demanding a surge in demand for solar power. Across Europe, homeowners are turning to rooftop systems to cut costs and boost energy independence.
Demand for rooftop solar systems across Europe has surged since the start of the Iran war. Households have rushed to shield themselves from soaring power prices, triggered by the worst global energy disruption in history.
Ever since the war in Iran began, we've really noticed that customers are keen to avoid fossil fuels and shun this dependence, and therefore they want to become self-sufficient.
That's Yannick Nolden, co-founder of German solar equipment wholesaler Solar Handle 24. The company said its net sales more than tripled in March to nearly $82 million from a year earlier, and are expected to triple again this month. It's a similar story across the industry and across Europe, according to interviews Reuters conducted with 6 energy equipment wholesalers and renewable utilities in Germany, Britain and the Netherlands. And it comes after new European solar installations slowed in 2025, as residential support schemes were phased out, according to industry lobby Solar Power Europe.
We saw extreme price surges for fossil fuels, similar to those in 2022 during the war in Ukraine, after which things leveled off a bit again. But of course, in the long term, we've raised awareness among the public again and really promoted solar energy effectively through this and shown that fossil fuels can make us dependent. They're subject to price fluctuations and the sun shines for free, so you can easily become independent.
To secure supply, Solar Handle 24 has stocked up around 500,000 solar panels in recent weeks. Nolden says the outlay is worthwhile, given the potential for net sales to rise to around $470 million in 2026, up from about $290 million last year. The trend is also lifting demand for energy storage technologies, which Holland Solar's Wienand van Hoof says is seeing demand increases of 40 to 50%. Shares in SMA Solar, the world's third largest solar inverter maker, have risen about 50% since the war began, amid the uptick in demand.
And it's not just the energy sector, the ripple effects are hitting global fashion supply chains. Surging fossil fuel prices are squeezing polyester producers in India and Bangladesh, raising costs for major retailers like H&M and Zara, and threatening higher prices for consumers.
At Bindal silk mills in western India, brightly printed polyester fabric rolls off machines. The finished fibers are stacked high in carts and sorted by hand. Inside the mills, workers stir large vats of chemical dye and feed fabric through folding and winding machines. The factory in Surat produces printed and dyed polyester fabrics for some of the world's biggest retailers, including H&M, Target, and Walmart. But behind this busy scene, there is a serious problem. The war in Iran has caused fossil fuel prices to increase. This has squeezed polyester suppliers in India and Bangladesh, and it threatens to increase costs for big retailers. Chief Executive Avichal Arya says his factory is feeling the pain.
Impacts low productivity because of labor shortage and high cost of production. So due to this both scenarios, we are not able to actually meet the demands of the global's orders.
Polyester, made from oil-based chemicals, makes up 59% of global fiber production. One major Indian producer, Filatex, says it's now paying nearly 30% more for its key raw materials. That's why in Surat's weaving district, many looms have gone quiet. At Radesham Textile, half of 200 looms sit idle. Kaushik Dudat is the owner.
Before the war, we used to produce at least 11,000 yards of polyester fabric per day, which has come down to 3,800 to 4,300 yards. Because if we want to produce more, we will have to purchase more raw materials, and we will not be able to buy it at the present rates, as the finished fabric will not be sold at a profitable rate that can benefit us.
Research group Wood Mackenzie says Indian prices for fiber rose by around a quarter over the month from late February. For now, some retailers will be protected from that by earlier purchases and the use of recycled polyester. Clothing giant H&M said it hadn't seen any big impact yet. But if factory prices stay high, shoppers could soon find their fast fashion getting more expensive.
And those pressures on the fashion industry are being felt by many retailers. Nike says it's cutting around 1,400 jobs as it looks to streamline operations and revive growth after a prolonged sales slump.
Nike said on Thursday it is laying off about 1,400 people to streamline workflows as the struggling sportswear company fights through a years-long sales slump. In a memo to employees on Thursday, the company said it would cut jobs in global operations, mainly technology. It accounts for a little less than 2% of the global workforce. Shares edged up about 0.5% in after-hours trading, but shares have lost more than half their value in the last 3 years. Nimbler competitors like On, Hoka and Anta have won more shelf space. It is the latest in a string of job cuts. Most recently, 775 roles were axed in January in a bid to speed up automation. CEO Elliot Hill, who took the helm in 2024, has vowed to recenter the brand, focusing on core sports like running and soccer and bringing new innovative shoes to market quickly. However, efforts to wow the market with new must-have sneakers have been inconsistent. Analysts believe Nike should be further along in its recovery, and the job losses are unsurprising. According to the memo, the cuts will allow Nike to better integrate its supply chains and to focus its technology operations in two main hubs in Oregon and India.
To the automotive industry now, and Tesla's rollout of its long-promised robo-taxi service is moving more slowly than expected, with analysts pointing to a more cautious tone from Chief Executive Elon Musk. Let's take a look at what he had to say.
The rollout of Tesla's robo-taxi business looks to be going slower than expected. That was the verdict from several Wall Street analysts Thursday, following an unusually downbeat update from Elon Musk the day before. Over the past year, the billionaire has outlined bullish expansion plans for the service. But in a call with analysts this week, he sounded more measured. Musk said he hoped to have robo-taxis and driverless vehicles in a dozen or so states by the end of the year. He said Tesla was taking a cautious approach to avoid injuries or fatalities. That's all a big change from last summer, when he had said robo-taxis would be available to half the population of the US by the end of 2025. He had said growth would increase at a hyper-exponential rate. Now analysts say Tesla is likely confronting the difficulties of operating robo-taxis. One said Musk's call was untypically low energy and was marked by unusual reserve and caution. Having once said robo-taxis would generate significant revenue by the middle of this year, he now says that won't happen until sometime in 2027. Investors will be watching very carefully, with much of Tesla's $1.5 trillion value tied to Musk's big promises on the new service. Critics note that he has a long history of unfulfilled promises on driverless vehicles stretching back a decade.
And finally, let's get more from the car industry as China's biggest auto show gets underway in Beijing. It puts a spotlight on the next wave of electric vehicles, with major players like Huawei and Chery Automobile unveiling new models aimed at sharpening competition in the global EV race.
China's largest auto show opened in Beijing on Friday, with tech giant Huawei and China's largest vehicle exporter, Chery Motors, showcasing their latest EVs. Chinese automakers are increasingly partnering with Huawei to lift car sales and improve factory utilization. It's following its success in reviving Ceres with the 2021 launch of the Aito brand. Data showed Aito in 2024 outpaced German automakers, including BMW, Mercedes-Benz and Audi in China's market, for all fuel-type vehicles priced above $72,500. The world's second-largest economy is home to the world's biggest and most advanced car market, but a multi-year price war has left the country with a surplus of vehicles. It includes electric ones mass-produced by companies that are unknown in the West. Car sales in China fell by 18% in the first quarter from a year earlier and are expected to remain flat or down for the foreseeable future. The global car market has come into focus of late. Analysts and industry watchers say foreign markets offer the promise of higher margins and meaningful growth in sales volume. Overall vehicle exports from China, including cars and commercial vehicles, are expected to grow 4% this year. That was according to a forecast from the China Association of Automobile Manufacturers.
That's your business news for today. Back to you, Andy.
Great selection as always, Katie. Thank you so much. All right, we're going for a short break, and when we return, we will be taking a closer look at Turkey and the United Kingdom deepening ties with a new strategic framework agreement. Do stay with us.
We are in Somalia, a place often used through the illusion of constant danger.
Somalia is already facing security threats from groups like Al-Shabaab.
Currently, Somalia has 3.4 million people internally displaced.
Mr. President, I want you to know that I'm signing now Israel's official recognition of Somaliland.
We are expecting all member states of the United Nations to recognize Somaliland.
We strongly rejected Prime Minister Netanyahu's illegal aggression in recognizing part of Somalia.
A conflict will last. People make so much money on it.
This country sits at the crossroads between instability and order, isolation and connection, risks and responsibility.
Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. Turkey and the United Kingdom are making deals again. The two countries have signed a strategic partnership framework document during Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan's two-day visit to London. For the details, we go to Adam Morrow in Istanbul.
The agreement was signed in London during meetings between Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan and UK Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, as part of a broader effort to formalize and expand cooperation between the two countries. Officials say the framework is designed to give greater structure to an already established relationship, setting out clearer areas of coordination across defense, counterterrorism, and regional security. In a joint statement, both sides underlined the importance of deterrence and collective defense, describing NATO as the foundation of security across the Euro-Atlantic. They also stressed the need to maintain strong transatlantic ties in order to respond effectively to emerging global challenges. The agreement places a particular focus on defense industry collaboration, with both countries looking to deepen cooperation in production, procurement, and technological development. Beyond security, the framework also highlights growing alignment on energy and climate issues, with plans to strengthen coordination on energy resilience and sustainability, as well as joint efforts in science, technology, and innovation. Economic ties are also expected to play a central role. Both sides signaled their intention to increase trade and investment, with ongoing discussions aimed at modernizing the existing free trade agreement to better reflect current economic conditions. Officials say the deal reflects a shared view in both Ankara and London that closer coordination is needed in an increasingly complex global environment where economic, security, and technological challenges are becoming more interconnected. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Now, to unpack the political and strategic implications of the Turkey-UK partnership, we're joined by political analyst and former diplomat Melih Demirtaş, joining us from Ankara. Welcome, great to have you on Primetime. How significant would you say is this agreement in the context of broader Turkish-British relations?
Thank you, Mr. Mewich. Good evening, first of all. And yes, Turkey and Britain, these are two traditional, maybe also players of the game, of diplomacy game for centuries. We had, of course, some ups and downs, but at the end of the day, we had always some kind of diplomatic maybe relations and status quo in our relations in every part of the maybe the crisis. You always seen these two important maybe bodies, I mean Turkish and the United Kingdom's, Britain's diplomats. And especially nowadays, the discussions is so tense, I mean, so hot about the topic of NATO because of the issue of maybe Mr. Trump's changing policies. Is really changing minds from day one to day two. I mean, he's really changing the style of diplomacy from his, the first days of the second term. And now, of course, with the crisis of Iran, maybe these two important, maybe traditional players, I mean, Turkey and United Kingdom must come together again. But I think in the background, we always seen that these military or some kind of technology transfers are always continued, because please do not forget that, or Eurofighter jets agreements, the new equipments, I mean military equipments, and everything's about this new system in Syria, this intelligence, and as you said in your first coverage, these new energy and trade systems. These are all, I think, the topics of this 2 days discussion of Mr. Fidan in United Kingdom. But what we are seeing, especially nowadays, is that what will United States do for the coming decades? And because of this, maybe both British and Turkish diplomats must be ready for this new term, for this new era.
When it comes to those changes within NATO, how significant is this framework document for those shifting alliances within the North Atlantic Treaty Organization?
As you also follow, the important summit will be held in Ankara, in Turkey, just in the 2 months later. We'll see many leaders. I mean, also, I think Mr. Starmer will be here. We do not know still about Mr. Trump. Hopefully will be coming, to Ankara. But we all see that NATO also transforms itself. Also, Mr. Rutte, NATO Secretary General, just, I think, 2 days ago, is also at important meetings with our foreign minister and also important defense ministry and these other sectors in defense industry. And now, as also Mr. Rutte indicated in his visit, that NATO will take some important steps. And this new era, I think, as you also indicated, this changing circumstances and changing alliances maybe pushes NATO to be much more adaptive to this changing circumstances. First of all, Iranian crisis. Of course, the Russian unending maybe influence area. It has not ended maybe in the Ukrainian crisis. Now, somehow we see in the Iranian crisis, in Baltics or Eastern Europe, in some other places, of course, the Russian influence cannot be denied. So maybe because of Turkish multipolar understanding and multidimensional understanding, because it's an important ally of United Kingdom, to build bridges also with some quote-unquote adversary sectors. Russia, British and Russian relations cannot be so in a positive, sector, as we all know, in this long 20th century. But in contrast of this, Turkish-Russian relations can somehow in a diplomatic line. Think about this last Antalya Diplomacy Forum in the last weekend. We both, I think, hosted Miss UK's Foreign Secretary, but also Mr. Lavrov, also Ukrainian Foreign Minister, and many other statesmen. And we all see that Turkey can really build bridges also between this opponent and different sectors.
When it comes to this latest bridge, this Ankara-London framework, would you say that perhaps the defense segment of it is the most important one?
As we see the first news, which are now coming to, or maybe, of course, computers, tablets, we all see that, yes, as you said, this defense sector is maybe number one priority of this last 2 days talks. But I think all the details cannot be made public, Mr. Mute, because the atmosphere is so tense. We do not know still what will be the next moves of different actors. First of all, Israel, for example. We know that there's a classical or traditional relations between Britain and Israel, and there's a growing influence, I think, of Israel also in this Eastern Mediterranean sector between Greece, Southern Cyprus, and Israel. Vis-a-vis this, of course, Turkish policy always wants to build these diplomacy bridges between different sectors, not this destructive attitude like Israel's. But in British, I think, foreign policy, all these segments has a meaning. And we will maybe also guarantee ourselves as Turkey that Britain wants to show its maybe constructive policy, especially in this region, Eastern Mediterranean and especially Middle East. Because when we think about this history of Israeli, for example, British relations, we cannot be so sure. So about the industry, about the military expenditures, also new technologies and intelligence, first of all, like in the case of this new Syria, we can say, like in the case of Iran, like in the case of Palestine, we will be together with this British, especially Starmer's government, who showed already, I think, that he can be a constructive actor.
Now, obviously, this framework covers a wide range of topics and issues beyond security. How much of a role would you say in this deal do energy and economic ties play?
Economy and energy is also cannot be separated from human relations, Mr. Much. And when we think about, of course, especially the communitarian level of these connections, we have seen many types of especially interaction between these two communities. Think about our Turkish community, Turkish entrepreneurs, also Turkish firms, also United Kingdom's investments, I mean, in Turkey. If you think from this perspective, we can also see that, yes, energy and especially the investment projects will be on the agenda, and also it is, I think, it was also discussed, I think, in this last 2 days visit of Mr. Fidan. But especially in such a time of crisis for energy sectors, think about this closure and openings and closure again, I mean, this Strait of Hormuz. We can say that, yes, the European segments, European communities also want some guarantees, and Turkey maybe shines a little bit such an actor, such a stable and trustable actor with new projects to maybe give this guarantee for stable energy projects. And yes, for new investments, and especially for cultural and communitarian projects, I think we will see more and more projects and more feature in these two important nations coming decades.
And finally, of course, with everything that is going on in the world right now, does this agreement with London perhaps signal a broader strategic repositioning by Ankara?
It is not only on the decision of Ankara, Mr. Much. Yes, Turkey is always looking from a multifaceted or multidimensional perspective as you look at the also Turkish foreign policy, starting from this long 20th century, but especially 21st century. We always look beyond. I do not forget these last statements of Ms. Ursula von der Leyen. I mean, she said that we must protect ourselves, quote unquote, to some adversaries, which are Russia, China, and strangely also Turkey. Some very different opinions we have still, especially in the European continent. But when we think about Britain, it's also a very skillful diplomatic country, I mean, and we also looked some important actors from this angle. Yes, we can have some different policy to Germany, France, but also to Britain, and we can adapt ourselves to this new multipolar world. That doesn't mean that we will not exclude our relation, of course, with Russia, Iran, or even China, and of course, Turkic world. So this multipolarity, especially in this chaotic atmosphere, started to be and still continue to be a very, very important pillar of Turkish foreign policy.
Well, Mr. Demirtaş, thank you so much for joining us on Primetime and offering your insight.
Thank you, Mr. Much.
Now, after a short break, we will be taking a look at the main stories shaping the day across the globe.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. around the globe, and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption. Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm Jay. That's challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gabala. One important note to this. I'm here. Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are reporting on the 8th of November. Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul for A News.
Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. U.S. President Donald Trump has responded to comments by Britain's Prince Harry, urging stronger efforts to end the war in Ukraine. Speaking at the White House, Trump said Harry does not speak for the United Kingdom and reiterated his focus on relations with King Charles ahead of his upcoming state visit.
Prince Harry?
Yes, sir.
How's he doing? How's his wife? Please give her my regards, okay? No, I don't know. I know one thing. Prince Harry is not speaking for the UK. That's for sure. I think I'm speaking for the UK more than Prince Harry. But I appreciate his advice very much. Great advice.
China is stepping up its regional diplomacy in Southeast Asia as Beijing looks to strengthen ties with partners while addressing shared security concerns. Talks in Thailand highlight growing cooperation on both economic links and cross-border challenges.
China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi met with Thai Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul during a courtesy visit on Friday. The meeting followed earlier talks between Chinese and Thai delegations led by Wang and Thai Foreign Minister Sihasak Phuangketkiao, where they discussed regional issues. The Thai government says the visit reflected hopes for improved relations between Thailand and Cambodia, following last year's armed conflict between the two countries. Thailand and China stressed the importance of tackling cyber scams and agreed to strengthen cooperation against transnational crime. Anutin thanked China for its continued support of Thailand, and Wang congratulated him on being re-elected to office. He expressed confidence that bilateral ties would continue to grow. After the meeting, Anutin gave Wang a ride in his Chinese-made BYD electric vehicle. China remains Thailand's largest trading partner. Beijing's investment in Thailand has increased in recent years as companies shift production to Southeast Asia to avoid US tariffs. Wang Yi is currently on a regional tour from April 22nd to April 26th, visiting Cambodia, Thailand and Myanmar.
The UK's push to lead in AI is shifting focus away from London real estate to industrial sites with one vital asset: access to the power grid. Here's more.
Across the UK, disused industrial land is being rebranded for a new purpose: hosting AI data centres. In Teesside, the Wilton International site is one example. Once tied to the declining petrochemical industry, it now offers something far more valuable: land with ready access to power and grid connections, what developers call powered land. That's become a major draw as tech giants plan billions in AI infrastructure investment. More than 100 data centre proposals have already been submitted across Britain, from old factories to retail sites. The shift reflects a change in demand. AI facilities don't need to be near financial hubs. They need scale and electricity, opening up opportunities in cheaper, often struggling regions.
The UK industry has been under a lot of pressure for a long time, and our site has seen a lot of that, especially recently with the decline in the petrochem industry. We've seen a lot of decline on our site. We've lost a few customers. We are attracting new customers in some of the new renewable spaces: hydrogen, sustainable aviation fuel, etc. But with our underused utilities, we also have an opportunity with having land and power available to be able to attract a data centre onto our site.
But the surge in interest is creating new bottlenecks. Grid connection requests have soared, with some projects now facing waits of more than a decade. Officials warn speculative applications are clogging the system and delaying viable developments. Land with existing power access is also commanding a premium, with prices in some areas doubling or even tripling. Despite the momentum, Britain is struggling to keep pace with European rivals, with most projects still stuck in early planning. High energy costs and regulatory hurdles are also weighing on investment decisions.
Norway is moving to tighten restrictions on children's access to social media as concerns grow globally over the impact of online platforms on young users. Here's the story on Oslo's plans.
Norway plans to present a bill to Parliament by the end of the year that would ban children under 16 from using social media, with technology companies responsible for verifying users' ages. Authorities have not yet specified which platforms would be covered. Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre said the measure is intended to protect children's development, warning that childhood should not be dominated by algorithms and screens. If approved, the rules could take effect as early as next year. Access would be restricted until January 1st of the year a user turns 16, creating a uniform system across age groups. Children and Families Minister Lena Vågslid said the approach follows consultations, including with young people, and aims to prevent social divisions within school classes. The government had previously considered a lower age limit, but opted for stricter rules. The proposal comes as countries worldwide move to curb minors' use of social media. Australia has already introduced a ban on under 16s, while several European nations are pursuing tighter regulation. Turkey has approved legislation banning social media use for those under 15, extending restrictions to certain gaming platforms. Denmark is considering a similar measure, while France and Spain are working on rules to limit access or require parental consent. These steps reflect a growing international effort to regulate how children engage with digital platforms.
Turkey has sent a new shipment of medicinal aid to Iran. It comes as part of an ongoing cross-border humanitarian initiative coordinated by health authorities.
6 trucks carrying essential healthcare materials departed from Van province in Turkey on Friday. The aid shipment, coordinated by the provincial health authority, includes medicine, supplies, stretchers and oxygen cylinders. They were collected from healthcare institutions across multiple provinces in Turkey. It follows a previous delivery on April 8th.
sınırımızın ötesinde kardeşlerimiz olan.
We will continue to support the delivery of these aid shipments across the border on an ongoing basis. We will keep doing this. We had previously sent 3 trucks. With these 6 trucks, a total of 9 trucks from our country will have been delivered to serve Iranian colleagues and citizens.
Following official procedures, the trucks are crossing into Iran through the Gerbalak border gate. Turkey has been sending aid regularly to Iran, including trauma kits, shelters and hygiene supplies.
Iran says it hopes to host a summit of Caspian states in Tehran in August, bringing together regional leaders for talks on cooperation and maritime issues. The planned meeting comes amid heightened tensions in the region and is expected to coincide with the International Caspian Sea Day, which also marks the anniversary of the Tehran Convention. The summit would bring together the Caspian states, Iran, Azerbaijan, Russia, Kazakhstan, and Turkmenistan to discuss environmental protection, maritime security, and regional cooperation. Pakistan has said it has cleared more than $3 billion in obligations to the United Arab Emirates, marking a crucial step in easing financial pressure on Islamabad.
Pakistan says it has repaid $3.45 billion in debt to the United Arab Emirates. The State Bank of Pakistan said it returned a final $1 billion deposit to the Abu Dhabi Fund for Development after repaying $2.45 billion last week. The central bank says this completes the full repayment. The move comes after financial support from Saudi Arabia, which provided around $3 billion in new funds and extended an existing $5 billion deposit. Officials say foreign reserves stood at $20.63 billion as of last week. Pakistan originally received the funds from ADFD in 2019 to help stabilize its balance of payments.
Nigeria is trying to stabilize its aviation sector as rising fuel costs and mounting financial pressure push local airlines towards crisis. President Bola Tinubu has approved a 30% debt relief package with further measures under review to ease strain across the industry.
Nigerian President Bola Tinubu has approved a 30% debt relief to local airlines, following talks with companies under pressure from rising fuel costs. The measure comes as airline executives say the industry has been pushed to the brink, with some operations nearly stopping altogether.
Bleeding. Yes, we threatened to shut down, not because we wanted to shut down, but because we had no money any longer to continue to borrow money from the banks just to pay for fuel and neglecting other things that are supposed to be done in the aviation industry.
Authorities are pushing for a quick resolution to pricing disputes that have strained the sector. The government will review taxes, levies and fees on domestic tickets, and a committee is expected to recommend cuts aimed at easing pressure on both airlines and passengers. Talks are ongoing to avert a disruption across Nigeria's aviation network. Nigeria is not alone. The impact of the war in the Middle East is being felt across the continent. Rising fuel costs and airspace disruptions are squeezing airlines and pushing ticket prices higher. Carriers are cutting routes and warning of deeper financial strain ahead.
All right, we're going for a short break, and when we return, we'll be checking in with our correspondents across the world. Stay with us.
We are in Somalia, a place often used through the illusion of constant danger.
Somalia is already facing security threats from groups like Al-Shabaab.
Currently, Somalia has 3.4 million people internally displaced.
Mr. President, I want you to know that I'm signing now Israel's official recognition of Somaliland.
We are expecting all member states of the United Nations to recognize Somaliland.
We strongly rejected Prime Minister Netanyahu's illegal aggression in recognizing part of Somalia.
A conflict will last. People make so much money on it.
This country sits at the crossroads between instability and order, isolation and connection, risks and responsibility.
Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm Jay. Challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories. Welcome to Gabala. One important note to fears. I'm here. Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we're recording the 8th of November. Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul for A News.
Welcome back, you're watching Primetime. Georgia is intensifying trade talks with China as it pushes forward a major Black Sea port project seen as quite significant to its economic future. Nini Nikolaishvili reports.
Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze has confirmed that negotiations are underway to expand the existing free trade agreement between Georgia and China, with further details expected once talks are finalized. The process coincides with the ongoing visit of the Minister of Economy and Sustainable Development of Georgia, Mariam Krevishvili, to China, which officials say is aimed at strengthening bilateral trade and addressing key strategic projects. Among those projects is the Anaklia port, a long-delayed development on the Black Sea coast that the government considers central to Georgia's economic future. According to Kobakhidze, discussions on Anaklia are part of the current negotiations and new updates are expected in the near future. The port is also a critical component of the so-called Middle Corridor, a growing trade route linking Asia and Europe with the South Caucasus. Its importance has increased amid instability affecting northern and southern transit routes, prompting greater interest from the European Union and other international partners seeking more reliable alternatives. However, the project carries significant geopolitical weight. In 2024, the Georgian government named China Communications Construction Company as the winning bidder for the port's development, though a final contract has yet to be signed. The involvement of the Chinese state firm, alongside reported interest from the Western actors, highlights broader competition for influence in the Black Sea region. Construction efforts are already underway, with Belgium's Jean de Noul carrying out key works. The project has also drawn attention from the United States, with officials monitoring progress and engaging with Georgian authorities. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Afghanistan is stepping up efforts to boost economic ties with Uzbekistan, focusing on the cotton sector and trade links. This comes as Kabul looks to modernize critical industries while opening new channels for regional cooperation. Tamim Bahis has more.
An Afghan delegation led by the Ministry of Industry and Commerce Nuruddin Azizi met with the governor of Bukhara in Uzbekistan, where both sides discussed enhancing cooperation in cotton cultivation using modern technologies, increasing Afghan cotton exports and expanding broader industrial and commercial ties. According to officials, the talks also covered new areas of cooperation, including tourism and medical travel between the two countries. The governor of Bukhara is also expected to visit Kabul soon to further strengthen trade relations and explore new investment opportunities. During the visit, the Afghan delegation, accompanied by the country's ambassador to Uzbekistan, representatives from the Agriculture and Livestock Chamber, as well as traders and industrialists from the cotton sector, toured several textile factories in Bukhara province. Officials say the purpose of these visits was to give Afghan stakeholders first-hand insight into modern cotton processing, advanced machinery and innovations in textile production. The initiative is seen as a step toward strengthening economic ties and supporting the development of Afghanistan's cotton and textile industries. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
The European Union is refining its Russia sanctions regime, turning its attention to third countries it believes are helping Moscow bypass restrictions. The latest package of sanctions now also targets Kyrgyzstan. Sevilla Rajapova has more.
The new European Union sanctions package, approved by European Union ambassadors in Brussels on April 22nd, includes stricter measures for third countries suspected of helping bypass restrictions against Russia. For the first time, these restrictions have been applied to Kyrgyzstan at the level of an entire trade direction with the country, rather than only against separate companies. Under the decision, exports from Europe to Kyrgyzstan of several dual-use goods are now restricted. This includes high-precision metal cutting machines, including computer numerical control equipment, as well as communication devices such as modems, routers, radio stations, and other data transmission equipment. The European Union believes Kyrgyzstan has become a systematic re-export route for these products to Russia and says earlier technical talks with Bishkek did not lead to stronger border control. In addition, several Kyrgyz logistics companies have been restricted from using European Union transport infrastructure. The broader sanctions package is aimed at reducing Russia's energy revenue and limiting its military-industrial sector. It also targets drone production, the so-called shadow fleet, and introduces a gradual ban on services linked to Russian liquefied natural gas. Pressure on Kyrgyz financial institutions has been increasing since 2024, with several banks and private companies already banned under sanctions by the European Union, the United States, Britain and Canada. President Sadir Japarov has called such restrictions unjustified, describing them as interference in the country's internal affairs. At the same time, neighboring Tajikistan saw the opposite development. As part of the same European Union sanctions package, 3 Tajik banks, Spitaman, Dushanbe City and Commerzbank Tajikistan, were removed from the sanctions list after Brussels recognized stronger compliance measures and closer cooperation with regulations, showing a clear contrast in how the region is being assessed by the European Union. It is Sevilla Rajapova reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
Climate change pressure in Central Asia is no longer a future threat. It's already being felt. That was the central message of a regional environmental summit that wrapped up in Astana. Fariza Kalimurzina has the details.
The regional environmental summit in Astana is wrapping up. Around 1,500 participants from Central Asia, the European Union and the Middle East took part. The message from leaders here is consistent. Climate pressure in the region is no longer a future risk, it's already being felt. Against this backdrop, regional cooperation is becoming a key focus. Uzbek President Shavkat Mirziyoyev proposed the Clean Air of Central Asia Consortium to attract green financing and cut emissions. He warned that temperatures are rising twice as fast as the global average. Nearly a third of glaciers are gone, and around 80 million hectares of land are degraded, with the lowest emitting countries facing the strongest impact. Water security is another growing concern. More than 1,300 glaciers in Tajikistan have already disappeared. However, they provide up to 60% of the region's water, according to Tajik President Emomali Rahmon. Faster melting is disrupting the water balance and raising the risk of disasters with longer and more frequent dust storms. Tajikistan is proposing a regional glacier monitoring center and steps towards a carbon market. At the same time, tensions around water use are also coming into focus. Sadr Japarov said Kyrgyzstan maintains key water infrastructure while other countries benefit, and called for compensation mechanisms, including financial support or energy supplies. All of this reflects a broader set of challenges facing the region, from water shortages and land degradation to air pollution and biodiversity loss. The pressure is building, Kasım-Jomart Tokayev said. He stressed that coordinated action is needed. He also urged that the Caspian Sea should not be used for military purposes. Separately, he warned that falling water levels are already putting its ecosystem at risk. Leaders adopted a joint declaration and agreed on an action plan through 2030. The focus now is on delivery. According to the United Nations, around 12 million people in Central Asia already face food shortages driven by climate change and water scarcity. That's why regional coordination is now seen as critical. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
Oil industry figures and energy professionals gathered in Baku for a two-day forum on oil trading and logistics across the Caspian and Central Asia. The event comes at a time of global turbulence when some say moving oil becomes just as important as producing it. A News' Rukaya Bashamak has more.
Now we are on day 2 and the final day of the second annual Caspian and Central Asia Oil Trading and Logistics Forum here in Baku. Today's discussions are focused on how oil moves across the region and how those trade routes can become faster and more efficient, especially with how quickly the global market is changing. Over these 2 days, around 150 senior oil professionals and traders have come together. On Thursday, we heard from major players like SOCAR, along with regional transport and rail companies, all of which helped set the stage. But today, the conversations go a bit deeper into the backbone of it all: pipelines, ports, rail corridors, and the key trade routes connecting the Caspian and Central Asia. So this event is also acting as a hub connecting oil companies and traders from around the world, creating real opportunities for partnerships and future deals. So as of now, as the forum is wrapping up, it all comes down to how to take all these discussions and turn them into real practical steps for a more resilient energy network.
The day's agenda is built around several main sessions, along with a series of panel talks. The first focuses on infrastructure. looking at capacity, delays, and how key routes across the region can be improved, with experts and panelists sharing their views on the subject matter.
I talked about Trans-Caspian Corridor and the important role of the Trans-Caspian Corridor. During these recent years, especially from 2022, it became not alternative route. It became a strategical route which is stable and needs for the region, especially we know that it connects China with Europe and vice versa. So it's a strategical role of this corridor now very important.
Okay, well, I think most importantly is that people come away from the conference with a sense of the challenges for their getting together to resolve issues of logistics and the middle corridor in terms of the collaboration that's required between the business community and the government.
The second session turns to risk and finance, covering investment conditions, access to funding, as well as sanctions, insurance, and the rules shaping trade, especially on how to better manage risks across cargo, shipping, and rail.
Well, firstly, I would say that having been involved with the Caspian for 25, 30 years, one of the things that stand out is obviously the production of crude, especially from Kazakhstan. And the volume, the mere volume, and obviously in Azerbaijan, the potential has always been there for cross-Caspian movements.
But keep trade credible.
The region, like Azerbaijan and the Central Asian region, they lie in between like east and west, and even from the ancient times, this road was part of the Silkway route. And now, well, as a result of Chinese policy of one road, one belt, this region is getting more investments, more interest, more attention.
Together, the talks show a shared focus across countries like Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan, as well as others in the region and the Middle East, not just moving oil, but moving it more securely.
Okay, we're going for a short break, and when we return, we'll be taking a look at mass layoffs rocking the tech industry as companies double down on artificial intelligence. Stay with us.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Welcome back, you're watching Primetime. Meta Platforms plans to cut 8,000 jobs, or about 10% of its workforce in May, as it shifts focus to artificial intelligence. The company informed employees in an email on Thursday, which also said around 6,000 open roles will be closed. Other tech giants, including Amazon, Snap, and Block, are also cutting jobs, with the number of layoffs reaching 52,000 in the first quarter. Now let's bring in Klaus Jürgens, political analyst with Economy First Limited. Klaus, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time and coming on Primetime. Now, what would you say is behind these layoffs? Is it, as it is being said, artificial intelligence, or is it perhaps satisfying investors?
Well, thanks for having me. Yes, this is, of course, a topic I'm really working on for some time. Not the layoffs, of course, which came on now, but artificial intelligence. And I say, is it a myth or a threat? And I come back to that point. I think blaming it on artificial intelligence, laying off 8,000 people, and as you said so correctly, putting 6,000, technically speaking, future or current vacancies on hold. We already talk about 14,000, and this is a massive number. Now, something like this doesn't come overnight. Think about Instagram, think about WhatsApp, think about Facebook. I'm sure you and me, and we all definitely in the media, we all use social media to make our point. We publish our own programs to make a point. We interact with the audience to make a point. Social media is simply there. So any big change cannot happen overnight. These people have business plans, strategy plans, SWOT analyses, like strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in the business community. So no, and now simply saying artificial intelligence is buying into our market share and what have you. Shall we not forget that the advent of social media, the everyday journalist, not meant negatively, citizens have to participate in making and doing news. Absolutely, this is democracy. But now, are those companies not basically themselves to blame to allow for an ever-increasing electronic access to media, making media, talking about media? And if you can't do it yourself, you resort to artificial intelligence. Now, all these websites we are talking about, just go on to Google. And if we have time, I want to give you one very precise example why I'm very worried about artificial intelligence in general. Then I come back to your initial point.
Please do.
Yes, I'm doing a program now for another European television station. I'm filming very shortly a documentary in Austria. I don't do, of course, public relations for that on another station. So just that's what I'm doing. And I needed to have some information about open air markets and access to information and city councils and what have you. I typed in all the correct keywords and I was so satisfied, hey, I don't need to have any government official paper here to actually film in a certain location. It turned out it was absolutely fake news, disinformation, and this is how AI often gets away with it. Now, WhatsApp and Facebook and Instagram and all of the other meta companies, if they want to continue to have any credibility, they must make sure that what is called AI is actually credible. And for this, you know what? You need humans. You need the human factor. Like I did today, we have to check what is right and what is wrong. Laying off people right now, I think using artificial intelligence it's simply an excuse, to be honest. As you said, please, the investors, things are not going well in many economies around the world. And why not lay off some people? It sets exactly the wrong signal. And I'm really, really so sorry for all these people involved. 8 plus 6,000.
Of course, shareholders have their interests, but how much is this the influence of politics? If we look back after the election in the United States in November 2024, when Donald Trump returned to the White House, we saw Mark Zuckerberg saying he will relinquish the fact checkers from his Meta platforms. How much does politics shape what tech says and does? And how does it manipulate its apps, and indeed its workforce.
Yes, thank you very much, my dear friend and colleague. This brings me back to one of my initial points, checking facts and fact-checking. I remember very well during the campaign, Donald Trump then successfully staged to get re-elected for a second term in the White House after a brief spell out of it. He basically complained that mainstream media is against him anyhow. Then he said European and many international mainstream media are siding with Kamala Harris anyhow. And he said, look, we need to have the reality out there. And he very heavily relies on social media. There is this famous saying, Donald Trump is tweeting around midnight, and sometimes he is deleting some of his tweets early in the morning. This is not a literal quote, but and I want to stick to the facts, but of course we listen to what other people say. Now, we all do tweet at midnight, and some of us perhaps say early in the morning, maybe I delete that tweet, I was overdoing it a little bit. That is social media as well. Now, no, of course, there is a political influence, absolutely, definitely in the United States. You want to have a free social media platform where what Donald Trump perhaps would say, perhaps, I can't put words into the president's mouth, of course, but just as a journalist now, I think he would actually rather prefer an absolutely free social media environment where he can publish his thoughts. Yes, he has to accept the fact other people have to publish his thoughts, but I think he is not going into regulating free speech on the internet. Now, and this brings him, of course, exactly opposite to what is going on in the European Union at the time. Only today it was announced in the Republic of Turkey that youngsters under the age of 15 should not have access to many or most social media platforms. So here we have it. Regulation on the one hand, absolutely so-called free speech on the other. And then you have the meta companies. Yes, but this is what I don't understand. Please really help me here. I don't understand why such a successful consortium, put it like this, of companies, and we all use social media and it's not going away. Why all of a sudden they would say, now we lay off staff and the open vacancies we do not fill. I would have said the strategy should be except the opposite. Get young people into social media and into Meta and train them about fact-checking to make sure that the credibility of our internet actually stays alive. I think it sets exactly the wrong signal. Who is now interested in ever working for the Facebooks or the WhatsApps, expecting to be laid off anyhow 1 year later? And yes, the shareholders come into play. But that is a short-term strategy. It will not pay off, I think. And there is politics, of course. Yes, I can't agree more with you.
And there's, of course, the global race for AI. Frequently, we hear about new models of AI coming out. If we look back to the launch of that first version of DeepSeek that sent shockwaves throughout the global markets. Today, we heard of a new ChatGPT version, Anthropic, which had its own episode with the Pentagon, has a new model that they say it's too dangerous to be released into the public. How much does this race to be the first, to be the better, how much does that affect all the constraints that need to be put in place, and where could that bring us as a society?
Yes, I strongly suggest a regulatory impact analysis, and I mentioned this a year ago at a huge event in Istanbul. Again, not making public relations for anyone else, but the event actually happened. It's fact-checked. I was there, and I said, look, maybe same like the internet, at one stage we need a new regulatory body actually checking social media apart from generally the internet, to stop disinformation and fake news. Yes, of course, I am not surprised. I was probably, again, no fake news here, but at least in my professional environment, one of the first who uses ChatGPT. And I was actually actively encouraged by one of the media networks I work with to do so. And they said, look, all of us are doing it, and please don't waste your time, you do it yourself. What was the result? In a certain media network, over 100 people already then, 3 years ago, 2.5 years to 3 years ago, were laid off, because there's no more need for interpreters, no more need for translators. You just use the click of a button, and then artificial intelligence does the work for you. I checked some of these things, in particular in my own native language in German, and I was appalled about the state of what this ChatGPT can actually deliver. Now, competition is good. It has to be made better. I was told the more we search, the more we type in keywords, the more we actually add content, all these AI tools will get better. But yes, can you imagine that a certain political dimension is not what you or me like? Not talking about you or me, of course, but in general. And you have trolls, or you have 2,000 people who type in the same keyword and say, this government of this nation is wrong. And eventually AI and ChatGPT will say, because by sheer algorithm, this government is wrong. And until we sort this problem, AI is not a real trustworthy source, but it is actually a helpful tool, including us in the media world. Now, coming back to my initial point, it needs human capital and the human factor to do due diligence. And a machine, for the time being, and hopefully never, cannot do human due diligence. I think Meta is sending exactly the wrong signal. If they want to please shareholders, if they want to please politicians, fair enough. I think it is a very, very short-sighted move, to be honest.
Klaus, thank you so much for joining us and for your insight.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you for watching Primetime. Join us again next week for more insight, analysis, and perspective from here in Baku and around the world. From all of us here at A News, thank you and have a nice evening.